Welcome back to the GSMC College Football Podcast. And obviously, guess what? We're going to talk a little more draft stuff. But I want to do a little kind of mini mock draft of what I think could maybe happen. Probably will be dead wrong. But I will say, I got like 5 to 10 picks right yesterday, so I was pretty happy with myself there. But it's a crapshoot. It's a guessing game. You never know what's going to happen. 33. This is a really interesting spot for Cleveland. I don't think Cleveland stays here, honestly. I think they're probably going to trade out realistically, or at a very minimum, they're going to at least field a ton of phone calls for this pick. I could really see a team trying to trade up to either maybe take Shedeur Sanders or take one of these guys that fell out of the first round, like a Will Johnson or a Mike Green. We'll see, though. It's going to be interesting. I think if they do stay, there's a couple of different options. So I had one, though, that's a little off track of the common thinking right now. I think they could go Nick Emmanwori out of South Carolina in one of those two picks. But here's why. I think his talent, the way he can move across the board, just gives the Browns a versatile chess piece. Jim Schwartz can move him around, put him in different formations, probably even bring him down as a sub-package linebacker at some point just because of size. Pairs with Grant Delpit on that back end to give them really much-needed juice. That other safety spot has really been lacking for the Browns past couple years. Juan Thornhill was a big disappointment. Just couldn't really stay on the field. And this is a guy that you pair him up with Grant Delpit. You have two safeties that can do a whole lot around the field and two guys that can fly. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And then also, if you have Greg Newsome has kind of been in trade rumors, got a $13 million cap hit. And I think if the Browns do move on from him, Nick Emmanwori is a guy that can also cover the slot at certain times. So I think just the versatility there, it gives the Browns defense a piece that they really could use. Obviously, they do have other needs. There's a ton of needs on the Browns roster, but I don't know. I think that's a pick that I wouldn't be surprised if secondary is actually an option for the Browns in the early rounds. I don't know. We'll see. They got a couple of different needs. Texans at 34. They're going to be an interesting choice. It's going to be their first selection of the draft. Really need offensive line help right now. I have them going Jonah Savionea out of Arizona. This is a guy that he lined up at right tackle, left tackle, and right guard during college. Primarily played tackle and can provide depth there in the NFL. I think this is a guy that probably moves on the inside when he gets to the league. But a pretty quick lineman at the combine, timed for the second fastest 10-yard split of offensive linemen. Also ran a sub-5 40-yard dash. Those are really impressive numbers for an offensive lineman, especially when you consider that he is 330 pounds. That's a lot of quickness and athleticism out of a guy that's that frame. And then I think just moving him inside, played 4 games at guard in 2023, and he's a better pass blocker on the inside than he is out at tackle. Houston really needs O-line help. Obviously traded him Laramie Tunsil, added Cam Robinson, made a couple other moves, but they still, at the minimum, can use depth on that offensive line. Jonas Savannah, that's a guy that can definitely add to the depth, probably start at one of the guard positions, hopefully fortify that for the Texans. They need to protect C.J. Stroud better. I'd be pretty surprised if this wasn't a line pick or on either side of the line. I think offensive line is much more of a pressing need for Houston right now, but they draft a guy that can play guard and tackle, gives them some help if they need to move guys across the line. I think it makes a lot of sense for them. Tennessee, it's going to be an interesting. We'll see. I have Luther Burden right now, but honestly, the more I think about it, I think this could be a spot for Mike Green to end up at Titans. could use some edge help too, but I think wide receiver, that's a really pressing need for them right now. They really only have getting up there and injury-riddled Calvin Ridley. That's their top wide receiver right now. Treylon Burks, kind of a bust. They need playmakers on this offense. You give them a guy like Luther Burden at 35 who can do a whole lot. I think he's a lot more talented than people are giving credit for. This was a guy that was a top 15 pick going into this season. And you give them Luther Burden, you let them slot him in at the number 2 wide receiver right away, and that's a really solid option for new quarterback Cam Ward. I think pairing those two together as rookies, it would make a lot of sense. They need to go skill position here, I think. But, we'll see what Tennessee does. I would not be surprised, though, if a wide receiver is the pick there, or a tight end, some kind of playmaker, I think. Then the Browns are back on the board at 36. This is where I do have them taking a tackle. I have Aireonte Ersery from Minnesota, big tackle, 6'6", 330. But the Browns really need tackle depth. They need O-line depth in general, but really need tackle depth right now. Jack Conklin, they did rework his deal. He's back another year, but has kind of been injured the past few seasons on and off. Right now, DeJuan Jones is penciled in as the starter at left tackle. He's also recovering from injury right now and hasn't really played left tackle. Has primarily played more right tackle. So you give them a guy that can slot in at left tackle right away, or, he bring them along slowly. You have him sit behind Conklin for a year and then take over there. This is a kid, he didn't start playing football until his junior year of high school, but played 38 games at left tackle. The Browns really need left tackle right now. It's an athletic lineman too. 10-yard split was outstanding. Ran it in 1.75 seconds. And a guy that explodes off the ball on the snap, and you can see it just show up on tape. This guy that he's able to pass edge defenders off pretty easily, and he can work up to the linebackers when blocking and getting upfield. I think it's a fit that makes a lot of sense for Cleveland. 37, here's where I have Shedeur Sanders falling. I think the Raiders stop his slide. Obviously, they did bring in Geno Smith, did give him a 3-year contract, but you never know. Hey, Atlanta brought in Kirk Cousins and then drafted Michael Penix at number 9 overall last season, so you can never know what can happen. I think, though, the Raiders have really loved Shedeur Sanders as a prospect. If they're able to get him in round 2, that gives them a quarterback of the future. He can sit behind Geno Smith for at least 2025 and then potentially step into the starting role in 2026. I think it makes a ton of sense for the Raiders to at least take a swing there, and hopefully he does pan out as a franchise quarterback for them. I think, though, that's a move that makes a lot of sense. The Patriots, 38, the Bears, 39. I have them both taking running backs right now. Obviously, which running back it's going to be, I don't know. But Patriots right now, actually, I have them taking Quinshon Judkins over Travion Henderson. But there's a reason I think the power-based running game of Quinshon Judkins fits more with what Mike Vrabel is going to try to build there in New England. His ability to just run through people, to force contact, and this is a guy that can do a whole lot. I think Quinshon actually is probably a better fit for New England, but then the Bears say, thank you, we're going to draft Mr. Henderson at 39. Chicago can pair Travion Henderson with DeAndre Swift, give Ben Johnson kind of a new iteration of his little thunder and lightning backfield of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs in Detroit. You give them a dynamic threat out of the backfield in Travion Henderson, a guy that can do a whole lot, especially in terms of the passing game. Just really builds that offense around Caleb Williams and gives them another dynamic ball carrier. I think it's a move that makes a lot of sense. I definitely think Chicago probably takes running back at 39. And then Saints at 40. here's where I think Will Johnson's slide is going to end. I think Saints take a cornerback, even if Will Johnson's not on the board. Saints could definitely end up grabbing him. They're in a really good position where they can kind of ease Will Johnson into the starting lineup. They still have Kool-Aid McKinstry, Aireonte Taylor, and Isaac Yiadom. So they can come in, be the fourth corner right away, and then kind of ease him into a role where he's building up. But this is a guy that can potentially take over as the number one cornerback and be the number one cornerback in New Orleans for a long time. I think the Saints would be ecstatic here if Will Johnson was still available to them. They get a potential top 15 talent in this draft at the number 40 overall position, at a position that they need. I think it's a move that makes a lot of sense. And then also when you pair that with the Panthers drafted Ted McMillan, the Bucks drafted Emeka Egbuka. So your two of your division rivals drafted wide receivers, adding to that room. You always want to try to combat your division rivals. So what do? You draft a cornerback. I think that could potentially make a lot of sense there for the New Orleans Saints. But we're going to have to see. That's part of the fun of draft weekend, is you never know what can happen. You never know who can be picked. You never know who's going to fall. We're just going to have to wait and find out. It's going to be a lot of fun, though, today. But with that, we are going to end our show for today. Thank you so much for tuning in to the GSMC College Football Podcast. Please remember to subscribe, like, follow, share, whatever your heart desires. And if you want, you can also go to Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter to get more sports content, more sports updates, all of that fun stuff. But thank you so much and have a great day.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great. I don't wanna go to